I am Kevin Haroff, and this is our first meeting with me serving this year as mayor of the city of Larkspur. So welcome to everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council for Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. And the time is now 6:33, so we got a couple minute late start. Like all the meetings we'll be doing this year, this will be, or at least for the foreseeable future, this will be done online only by video conference. So welcome to everyone who's been able to log in, and we'll get started with the roll call.
Councilmember Candell?
I'm here.
Councilmember Paulson?
Here.
Councilmember Waive?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hilmer?
Here.
Mayor Hara?
Here. So thanks everyone. We'll go on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment. This is a time for members of the public to address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda or they're listed as part of the consent calendar. If you wish to speak, I guess, Allison, you'll have to recognize those who raise their hands. Please, if there is anyone out there who wishes to speak, limit your comments again to items not on the agenda and limit your remarks to 2 to 3 minutes. Is there anyone out there who wishes to speak on the public comment?
Thank you. I'm looking for any raised hands from our audience members for public comment or any emailed public comments at this time. And there is no public comment.
Wow, that kind of surprises me. That's good. All right. So we'll move on to item number 3, presentations and proclamations. There are none listed on the agenda. Agenda item number 4 is approval of the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and can be enacted by a single vote of the council. There will be no separate discussion unless specific items are removed from the calendar. Any council member may remove an item from the calendar and place it for further discussion, and members of the public can also do the same. Are there any items on the consent calendar that members of the council wish to remove for separate consideration? Seeing none, are there any members of the public that would like to remove an item from the consent calendar for separate consideration?
I'm looking for any raised hands from our audience members. And there is no raised hands.
Okay, fine. In that case, can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll run down the roll call real quick.
Yeah, we may want to do roll calls. It's probably better to do that.
Councilmember Candell?
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson?
Yes.
Councilmember Waive?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hilmer?
Yes.
Mayor Hara?
Yes. So the consent calendar is approved. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, number 5, our city manager's oral report. So Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council members, I only have 2 items for you this evening. The first is I want to make sure that all of the council and the public are aware that the general plan update is in draft form and available for public review and comment. It's on our website. On the homepage, you'll find the link. And we encourage folks to take a look at the document and give us your feedback. And then secondly, the County of Marin will be hosting a public workshop to discuss wildfire mitigation efforts. It's going to be on February 2nd, and Central Marin Fire Zone Hazard Mitigation Specialist Todd Lando will be one of the panelists. I think this will be really informative and encourage the community to attend if possible. There's information about how to attend on our website and on the County of Marin's website, and that's on February 2nd. We'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Just a follow-up question on the general plan. Is there a schedule or an outline of a time frame when we'd be looking for public comment?
Yes, let me check what it is real quick. One of the advantages of being online, I can hopefully call that up pretty quickly. I am not seeing the comment period listed. I apologize. We will get that corrected so that that's noted for the public.
Okay, is it 30 days, 60 days, likely, something like that?
I don't want to speak incorrectly,
Yeah,
Mr.
no, I
Mayor,
understand.
so I apologize.
That's okay. Let's just get that posted and make sure that everybody knows if they do want to submit comments that they need to do it in a timely way. So, okay, that's fine. So nothing further from the city manager. We'll move on to item number 6, council members' oral reports and comments. Are there any members of the council that would like to make a report? Okay, Councilmember Waive is muted, so I see her lips moving, but not anything there.
I have nothing to report at this time.
Okay, good. Gabe, you had something? I think you raised your hand.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mayor Hart. So just 3 brief comments. One is, we're starting a new year, and with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Agency, our retreat is tomorrow. So we're inviting the public to participate, to comment. The goal really will be to set the vision and strategy and the alignment for the agency. And, there's really a lot ahead, and we hope to get a real head start on the fire season, coming up for 2021. So that's one item. And then I noticed Julie Servetto's on the call, and I just wanted to, in the Zoom, and I wanted to, give her a belated shout out from December, all the work she did. We did a little bit together. And of course, Mayor Harif is the primary liaison, but thank you so much for, supporting the businesses during COVID and, with all kinds of constraints. I just wanted to give her that thank you. And last is sort of a New Year's resolution. I'm really trying to reach more constituents this year. So I had a great meeting with Rose Lane, and I look forward to meeting other neighbors and trying to get more input on some of the things we'll be voting on later this year. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for those comments and for the shout out to Julie. Julie's been doing yeoman's work on behalf of the chamber, and under a stressful time for both budgetary and logistical reasons. And we had a chamber meeting earlier today and went through a bunch of things on the list, and she's very busy, and we really appreciate her efforts, the efforts of everybody on the chamber. And I think we actually have one of our city council members who has just joined. So I'm very happy to see Mr. Candell, right, who has joined the chamber. That's terrific. So good for you. Any other council member reports? Vice Mayor Hilmer is shaking his head. I don't have anything myself. So unless there is anything that somebody wants to bring in, let's move on to our next item, which is agenda item number 7, public hearings. We have 2, 7.1, which is a Marin Sanitary service rate presentation on garbage and recycling collection for 2021. We do this every year, and it's always a very helpful presentation. And then we have an ordinance that we will introduce in item number 7.2. We'll get to that in a minute. So if we could proceed with the Marin Sanitary Service presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to remind the mayor, the council members, and the audience that this is a public hearing, and there will be an opportunity for the public to weigh in on the proposed rate increase. Before the council is a proposed rate increase of 3.84% across the board, very comparable to last year's rate increase. This is in part a reflection of a change in methodology to try to create more stable and predictable adjustments to the rates. And I'm pleased to introduce at this time Garth Schultz from R3 Consulting Group, who helps the franchisors of Marin Sanitary in analyzing rates and bringing rate proposals before the council. And Garth is going to do a brief presentation. And I do want to note, I see that Patty Garbarino from Marin Sanitary, or someone from Marin Sanitary, is logged in and would probably be available if there are questions later from the council. With that, I'll turn it over to Garth.
Thanks, Garth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Manager Schwartz. Honorable council members, I'm Garth Schultz with R3 Consulting Group. Dan teed me up here, but we work on behalf of the agencies, the 7 agencies that have franchise agreements with Marin Sanitary Service on what is a third-party independent review of their annual indexed rate adjustment application. And we work on behalf of the agencies and the ratepayer interests. We don't work for Marin Sanitary Service. We're not the garbage company itself, but we do work collaboratively with them and understand their operational issues and overall company position. I have a short presentation, which I believe, I assume I can share on this end. Dan, is that correct? I'll just share it here. And then happy to take your questions at the end, council members. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, there it is.
Excellent, great. And can I skip? There we go, excellent. So as Dan had queued up, there was a new methodology that was adopted by the council as well as the other Marin Sanitary Service agencies back in 2019, or really the first year that it was applied was in 2019 and then in 2020. And it had objectives that were listed here to streamline and simplify the process, make it less costly for folks like myself, for consultants, bring that annual cost nugget down, but also reduce the impact on staffing resources across the Marin Sanitary member agencies. And happy to say that all 3 of those objectives have largely been met, at least in terms of this first couple of years of this new methodology being in place. And the key difference between this methodology and the old methodology primarily has to do with controlling and managing revenues or rates paid to the company and not focusing quite so much, at least in these interim indexed-based years, on the expenses incurred by the company. So we're regulating the revenues that go to the company, and you have an opportunity with the other agencies to periodically dig into and look at expenses, but not doing so as a matter of annual course. So for this indexed rate adjustment year, which is set by the agreement, it uses a nationwide external market index for roughly 2/3 of the rate that correspond to the direct operations performed by Marin Sanitary Service. And by that, I mean the collection of garbage, recycling, compostables, the provision of bulky item pickups, city crew wastes, some illegal dumping wastes, direct services in the field with trucks and people. That 2/3 of their rate, and thus 2/3 of their overall company expenses for this year via this market index posted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that component will increase about 2.9% in a nice controlled fashion. And the index specifically it's virtually a CPI for water, sewer, and trash utilities on a nationwide level. The other remaining 1/3 of the rate adjusts for externalities, those externalities being listed at the bottom of this slide, the cost of processing recyclables and composts, recycling the contents, and disposing of garbage and other residuals, as well as for government fees, such as those fees set and collected by the city and other government agencies in Marin County. So, in a nutshell, 1/3 of it is set by this external index. Sorry, 2/3 is set by the external index, and 1/3 is a pass-through based on factors that are outside of MSS's control. Now, for this year, the results of the indexed rate adjustment methodology and MSS's application for Larkspur results in a 3.84% increase to the rates. That's the calculation from the methodology. We've reviewed that in detail and concur with the outcomes. And what that means for most common residential ratepayers, which are those subscribing to the 32-gallon garbage monthly rate, is less than $2 a month increase, increasing from 49 to over 50, as you see at the bottom of the slide. One important note, and just as a reminder to the council and the community, is the rates are set based on garbage container size, but they're inclusive of the entire suite of services. And it's important to remember that the cost to collect garbage versus recycling versus green waste organics is virtually identical. The cost to process garbage versus recycling and organics is in fact shifting to the degree that it is more costly in many senses to process recyclables and organics, but it still remains a state requirement and important. So put another way, and the reason I bring this up is just I think folks think of garbage being the entirety of the cost, and in this day and age, that simply isn't the case. We just set the rate based on the garbage container size, which is up for option by subscribers, whether residential or commercial. You can increase or decrease your monthly bill by better utilizing your recycling and organics containers and downsizing your garbage container if feasible. That's hard with many of us working and living full-time from home all the time now, but that's just an important note. Now, we do like to show the council on an annual basis just what the playing field is of comparable rates in Marin County. And you can see Larkspur kind of smack dab in the middle there of the set of green bars, slightly above the average for Marin County as a whole. And one of the reasons you're slightly above average is that you do have a vehicle impact fee that is adequately supporting and funding your streets, but some of the other agencies don't have that. And that is a primary differentiating factor between what you see for Larkspur, say for Ross or Las Gallinas sanitary district. So that's why you see variability in the green bars, those green bars all being franchisors of Marin Sanitary Service. Overall, this is a comparison for that same 32-gallon, common-sized customer rate with your proposed rates for 2021. Other rates are expected still to increase in 2021, especially for those on the left-hand side, which is Mill Valley Refuse Service. They're on a fiscal year cycle. Those would be anticipated to go up come July of this coming year. And then it's important just to call out the outliers in the middle there, although one of them's becoming less of an outlier with time. The city of Novato, really Novato Sanitary District, has rates that are still legacy rates associated with a prior company with which the district did business that has since transitioned to Recology. And we anticipate that those rates will start to normalize to the market average over time, as West Marin's rate have done. They incurred a larger increase last year, which is bringing them overall closer to the average bar. So in short, you're in keeping with the average within Marin County for the services you receive, which we should note compare quite favorably to the suite of services and packages that are offered, not only in Marin County, which has a high quality of service overall, but then also throughout the Bay Area and in California. That is a fairly high-level summary. Very happy to take any more nuanced or detailed questions that you might have, and do refer to the report that is attached to the council packet. Thanks once again for your time, and I welcome any questions you have.
Thanks very much for that presentation. We've been working through use of this methodology now for what, 2 years, 3 years almost now, and it's really I think provided a great benefit to those of us who are paying the rates for these services. In past times, we had a lot of variability in the rates that caused some consternation within our constituency and on the council. And I think the use of this methodology has been a big improvement. So I appreciate hearing this report. Are there any other comments from council on this? Gabe, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. Garth, thanks for that presentation. 2 questions for you. One was, I'm sort of thinking about the environmental side of this, not just the cost. So I think it was Assembly Bill 1826 was the one that required the recycling of organics. And last year you were looking to get 200 more subscribers. Can you say where that number fell and how that's going? And then the second question was your profit calculation. So I know, in all this methodology, MSS, calculates out a profit, which last year was about 3 million. How did it look this year?
Good questions, both. I'll take the latter question first, just because it's front and center here. So one, there is no guaranteed profit. It is a profit calculation for the purposes of establishing a revenue target. And MSS's ability to meet that profit depends on their control of expenses, given what are essentially kind of a set of revenues. And for Larkspur for this year, again, just, theoretically for the purposes of setting rates, it's a collector profit on the order of 500,000 just from the company and 3.6 million overall for the MSS service area, which now it has been expanded to be inclusive of all 7 agencies. That's one of the differences you will see in our report, is that 2 prior kind of outlying communities, San Anselmo and Fairfax, are now included as a part of this consolidated rate application. So I hope that answers your latter question.
Yeah, so the profit is 20% higher this year, the calculated for the entire franchise.
I think that that's a little misstated, because that number, that aggregate number I just gave you, includes San Anselmo and Fairfax, whereas the aggregate number I would have provided you last year would have been less. Overall, their revenue requirement is going up by a, total revenue requirement is around on the order of your rate increase, about 3.8%. And so that should translate through to what their allowable profit for rate setting purposes would look like. It would be an increase on the order of magnitude of around 3.8.
Okay, thank you.
And again, that's not a guarantee. It's incumbent on their ability to both control expenses and collect revenues accordingly. To the former question, so one, with respect to the ability to subscribe more customers to the organics program, I will defer to MSS directly for that, as they may have those answers. That's not a part of what my company evaluates with the rate application. But I will say that 2 primary laws do affect that service offering, and you should continue to expect some change in the coming year or 2 as a result. One being AB 1826, which you see a line item for in the application as it relates to their ability to collect and evaluate customer service or customer subscription information. And that is to confirm whether or not commercial and multifamily generators of waste are required to then recycle their organics under state law. That threshold has actually changed as of January 1 of this year. So instead of being 4 cubic yards of total waste generation being the trigger that folks must subscribe, that's been lowered to 2. And so that will certainly drive more participation, and we'll rely on MSS to provide the results to date on that. The other new law that you should be aware of coming forward is SB 1383, which is now in effect, and it ramps up even further the expectation for organics recycling and participation. Those planning efforts will be forthcoming on an MSS area-wide level with our support here coming up in 2021, which will also then have impacts both in the services and the expectations and the rates for 2022 when the law takes full effect, and there's expectations under the law that all cities, towns, counties, special districts will do a number of things, including adopt an ordinance which requires mandatory participation in organics collection program with enforceable penalties. And that latter point that's important. It also has expectations for support and recovery for edible food, which is an important issue on a number of fronts. Expectations around agency procurement of things like compost or compressed natural gas from renewable sources, and a whole host of other regulations and changes. So those are coming forward soon. You should expect more communications around that once that study gets underway this year. And it will outline for all of the MSS agencies what your obligations under the law are, as well as the obligations of waste generators, and then how that will translate into potential changes in the rate package for MSS going forward.
Great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from council members or comments? Thanks very much for that presentation. Do we have any members of the public who would like to?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
It does look like Patty Garbarino might like to.
Oh, I'm
comment.
sorry. Yes, that's fine. Patty, please. I didn't see her on that. Yeah, she's on there now. She just popped up.
Evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of this hearing. I want to thank Dan and Garth for the report and the presentation earlier. I want you to know too, I'm not sure if you can see me, but I'm accompanied by our new Director of Operations, Justin Wilcox, who's got many, many years in this industry. He came out of waste management in Oakland and then our sister company up in Windsor, and has a specialty also in outreach. Ruben Hernandez is here as well, and he does our food waste to energy organic diversion program. So together they will respond to your question, Councilman Paulson, and talk about organics 1826, 1383, and how we're going to roll that out. And I would echo what Garth had said about the fact that we're actually going to be meeting very soon, within the next 2 weeks, to start moving forward on the planning, our service area wide, to make sure that organics are diverted from the landfill, which represent anywhere from, depending upon the scientists you talk to or get data from, anywhere from 14 to 19% of greenhouse gas production in landfills. Also, Jason Raleigh, our new CFO, is here with me. He hails from the pharmaceutical industry and is also doing a fabulous job. And all three of these gentlemen are rock stars. And speaking of rock stars, I'm here also with my hero and my dad, Joe Garbarino. And we're very pleased to be able to continue to serve you all. And also wish you a very happy, healthy new year, new start, especially given the events of today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ruben and Justin to answer your question about organics. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us. And just to discuss quickly 1826, we have really been focused with all of our jurisdictions, but especially with Larkspur, and helping bring up compliance of 1826, making sure that the businesses and apartment complexes in the community are aware of these requirements and are able to be compliant. As Garth mentioned, that has expanded to those producing 2 cubic yards and more recently. And so in the since October, we've made a really strong push, and through email and letters and phone calls, reached out, made over 200 contacts in the community, notifying them of these changes and helping bring them up to speed. So we are updating our compliance for Larkspur at this point, and how we're doing as far as that regard goes. So I don't have those numbers for you right away, but we can definitely provide those for you in the next day or two. But you know, as we comply with this and get ready for 1383, which is coming up, we are confident that with the team and the efforts in place, we'll be able to help ensure that the community is staying compliant with the state regulation that's before us.
Okay, good, thanks. Gabe, did that help answer some of your questions?
Yeah, that's very helpful. And if I can just slip in one, a bit of a tangent. After the hearing last year, I reached out to your director. I guess it's a new person, and I remember being pleased that nobody had COVID. And then I read in the paper you guys had a COVID outbreak. So just on a personal note, I'm wondering how everyone's been doing with the COVID issues, you know, through this year.
We've had, thank you for asking that question. We've had we were deemed a hotspot in June. Frankly, every time there's a holiday, we mirror what's going on in the community. And that was as a result of graduation parties that perhaps should have not been graduation parties. in June. We reached a total number of 43 at that point. I think overall now we're up to about 70. We have a staff of 260 on site. When the bubble or the hotspot started to be created in June, of course, working with contact tracers, the county, and Kaiser, who was phenomenal. Kaiser and Pat Kendall, if you know her, phenomenal individual. Just the services were wonderful. The county had considered, frankly, shutting us down. And I pled with Matt and said, I have no idea in the next 10 hours where I'll send tens of thousands of tons of material tomorrow. It just won't happen. So they came, they did a tour. They deemed that this was not as a result of anything we had done, although they suggested one more hand sanitizer station. So that's a good thing, right? So, but that it was community based. So we're doing our very, very, very best to separate individuals who actually work as by design in their job very closely together. Working with Mike McGuire, our state senator, trying to stay on top of where are we all going with this? How much do I need in the way of PPEs in order to keep us rolling? And he checked with the State Department of Health and came back with a year's supply, perhaps more than you need to know. But we have now, I was assured this morning, 14,000 gloves on site. We have 11,000 gloves on site, 14,000 masks, hand sanitizer to sanitize most of the Northern Hemisphere. And we've got protocols. We've got a very healthy relationship, not only with the county, but as I mentioned, with Kaiser as well. And we continue to get the word out about it's just not a good idea to have a family party. And it would seem as though family parties are the predominant reason why people are getting COVID. We only had one of those overall 71 hospitalization, thank God. Everyone's back to work of all of those individuals but one. So we just hope and pray that as we move forward and the vaccines become more available, that this will be a pandemic that will slow down. I'm also fortunate enough to have a seat on the Golden Gate Bridge District Board, and Dennis Mulligan, if you know him, he's just phenomenal. He assures us all, or he called me and made me feel better about this pandemic when he said, the Spanish flu was followed by the Roaring 20s. So one can only hope that that's also what we experience, and just continue to hope and pray and wear the mask and wash your hands and 6 feet apart. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for all the interviews. Yeah.
I have a question.
Thanks, Patty. Catherine, go ahead.
Sure.
Hi, Patty. I wish I could say hello and say hello to your father if he's
Thank
there,
you.
but all we have is your
Yes.
title on the screen.
Yep.
My question is in regards to biomass also. With this new Marin Wildfire Prevention Agency, which is really leading the charge in vegetation management and increasing the amount of flammable vegetation around homes and businesses, you're going to see I assume, a large spike in that type of material coming into your facility. Are there long-range plans at all for some type of biomass processing plant for energy, or are there plans to deal with this larger than normal amount of vegetation?
Well, that's a very good question, Catherine, and thank you for asking. Not only do we have that, but we have 1383, and Justin is prepared to answer that biomass question, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, as Patty mentioned, this is something that we've really looked at a lot, because we've already started to see some material come in from Measure C funds with Fire Safe, and they were doing some community curbside pickup of material and bringing that to us starting this past summer. So we definitely anticipate that increase and are waiting to get further estimates on what that'll look like over the next few years as far as total volumes. But one of the things that we've spent a lot of time looking at, this goes back a number of years, and we actually have the permits in place already for this is a biomass processing plant on site. It would, what we've looked at is conversion that keeps the emissions down and would allow us to capture that energy, use that on site, and produce enough that we could sell that back to MCE as well. So
And you have the vesting, we have the land use vesting already.
Yes.
We have for years. Did I say? Did you say?
yeah, so
Okay.
it's something that we are talking with a couple different companies now that have that technology and are see that in the short long term for getting that solution on site and bringing that in house. Right now, those that material goes to burn plants that do produce energy from that, but it's in the Central Valley, a long haul, and we want to reduce that impact through transportation and bring that local.
And thanks for that comment, and also thanks for mentioning the connection with MCE. That's been on MCE's radar screen for some time, and there's a lot of recognition that the disposal of those materials outside our area is unhelpful because of the transportation cost and emissions associated with those transportation alternatives. So yeah, you'll get a lot of support for moving forward with this project, I think, from that organization.
Thank you, Kevin. We've been working, as Justin said, very closely with them. They've been very supportive.
Yeah, no, and but it's important for MCE to have a diverse portfolio of what are essentially all kinds of renewable energy resources, and biomass is certainly one of those. So we appreciate the cooperative relationship and look forward to progress.
That's phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Sure.
You were the partners that we had when we started Food Waste to Energy with Jean Bonander and Ken Nordoff. Together, the three entities started that program to divert that food waste at CMSA. So I think
Yeah,
as well.
Right. No, absolutely. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone from the public would like to ask a question?
I think you need to declare the public hearing open, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then I declare the public hearing to be open.
Our first public comment will come from a caller ending in 1402.
Yes, James Holmes, Larkspur. I have a question and a couple of comments. I did see the article also on the COVID outbreak at Marin Sanitary. And so particularly if the current rate of COVID is 70 out of 250 employees, I wonder if there has been any suggestion that the ubiquitous plastic carts bins could be a possible factor for spreading COVID to customers. With regard to I have a question which I would ask to be put to the consultant, and that is with regard to the 1/3 of the increase, which is characterized as pass-through. Are all of those pass-through costs incurred to non-affiliates, or are any of the pass-through costs incurred and paid to affiliates? So that would be my question. My comment is that the increase seems to be ill-timed at a time when so many small businesses are suffering and many residents are also suffering. It seems somewhat unreasonable and inappropriate to impose this rate increase. I think the hardships imposed by COVID-19 should be shared amongst all businesses equally. And in that connection, I'm a little bit surprised to hear a potential 20%. Well, I think the company is certainly doing very richly if they are making $500,000 on Larkspur alone. And I'm not sure I understand the variance between an apparent 20% increase in entity-wide profits and then the 3% increase but there does seem to be a rather substantial profit increase, and that rings rather hollow at a time of widespread hardship occasioned by COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public?
I'm looking for any further raised hands or any emailed public comments, and there is no further public comment.
Okay. In that case, then I think we can just bring this matter back to the council for any further discussion and in consideration of the proposed resolution 0221.
Would you like Mr. Schultz to address the public's question?
And similar to Dan's earlier comment, don't forget to close the public hearing.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Should I do that now?
If you'd like to hear a response from Garth about that, I would wait to close the public hearing until after that, so it's part of the record.
Okay, good enough. Garth, if you could respond to that.
Yes,
if you could.
so with respect to the approximate third that is passed through, a portion of that is for an affiliated company, which is the Marin Recycling Recovery Association. That's the material recovery facility, the plant with the belts and the sorters and the magnets and screens where recyclables are processed. So that is the only affiliated portion. It's around $171,000 projected for this year. And that's based on a calculated per ton tip fee related to recyclables. And that per ton tip fee is controlled on the expense side by the same CPI as the collection operations. So that has a cost control around it. And then it is also then adjusted in accordance with the change in the marketplace, which we briefed the council on in the past, and many of you are probably aware, has fluctuated over the course of recent years as it's a trading in international commodities, and was affected heavily by the Chinese national sword in 2017, which essentially reduced the overall net revenues associated with the sale of recyclables. So that portion, the change in revenues from that sale can affect that per ton tip fee, either increasing it if revenues go down or decreasing the per ton tip fee if revenues come back up, which would be possible if the recyclables commodities market started to recover. So just one small portion of that third pass through is for an affiliated party. All others are non-affiliates and or government fees. With respect to the apparent 20% profit increase, that's just a comparison of a table that listed 5 agencies last year and 7 agencies this year. In reality, the calculated revenue impact for profit, again, not guaranteed, goes up in proportion to their overall above the line expenses before profit, which is in the order of 3 to 4% for this year. I don't have the exact number, but it is definitely not anywhere near 20%. And then with respect to the latter question relating to the timing of a rate adjustment as it correlates with COVID, there is a kind of a contractual obligation to review the rates on an annual basis. And one important factor as it relates to residential ratepayers that may be suffering a hardship that's COVID related or otherwise, MSS in the rate structure and in the rate tables that are attached to the staff report does offer a 20% low income rate discount for all residential cart sizes for customers that can demonstrate eligibility for PG&E's CARE program. So that is already baked into the rates that they have available. And all folks need to do is to call and contact MSS and provide, I think, what is, I believe, fairly minimal documentation, although they can answer that side around their eligibility, and then they can get a low income discount, a 20% low income discount for that.
Okay, anything? I'm sorry?
That concludes my remarks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good, great, thanks. Anything further?
It appears, Mr. Mayor, that Ms. Garbarino might want to add some additional information.
Okay, that's great.
So much. I just wanted to comment about the first statement that Mr. Holmes had made about COVID and perhaps contact of COVID on the carts. We went through a consternation with that in the very beginning as an industry, and were able to contact folks at OSHA and found out that not only do the carts no longer, once they've been set out, carts, cardboard, and the contents are no longer a contagion if they've been set out for a number of hours, and it was approximately 2 to 3 hours. So that gave us a great deal of comfort to make sure that we weren't spreading the virus. I believe that was it. Were there other questions that you had? No. Okay.
No, but that just reinforces the need to put your carts out the night before. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, so I think now may be the time we can close the public hearing. Okay, I'm seeing Sky nodding. Okay, so with that, I'll bring it back to the council for any further discussion and consideration of a possible resolution. Anything more from the council? Yeah, Catherine?
I think it's very reasonable what they've provided to us. And I'll echo what you said with the rate structure ability that we've had in the last several years to see more refinement in that. I appreciate that. I also continue to remark on my travels around the world how great it is to have somebody come to your home and take away your waste. So I would like to move the approval of 7.1 Marin sanitary service rates for garbage and recycling collection for 2021.
Okay, and that's memorialized in Resolution 0221.
And
So,
can I impose a question here?
Yeah, sure.
And I guess, I don't know, Dan Schwartz, if this is for you or Mr. Mayor, what are our alternatives here? I mean, if we vote no, then what? I mean, if we don't have an alternative, we're not going to not have people pick up garbage and recycling. What exactly are we voting to do or not do?
I think if you voted no, you would be sending us back to the table to talk with the company, but in all likelihood, we'd probably be down a path of discussing the city absorbing lost revenue for the company based on the agreement we already made. Essentially the council, as Mr. Schultz told you, is already contractually obligated to follow the formula that was adopted, and the formula produced.
That was my take, that we weren't. I mean, it's kind of almost, I don't want to say a done deal, but we're basically voting to approve something that we've already approved. In a sense, is that right?
Yes, recognizing that you have obligation to hold the public hearing and hear the public concerns about.
Okay.
Well, and also to review, as we've had tonight, the presentation on how the methodology has been applied this year, and the use of the methodology was something that we did approve 2 years ago. So.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. With that, I will second the motion if that hasn't been done yet.
I don't think we have a motion yet. Or Catherine, did you make a motion?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the rate increase and adopt Resolution 0221, and we have a second from Councilmember Candell. I guess we should probably have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Candell?
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson?
Yes.
Councilmember Waive?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hilmer?
Yes.
Mayor Haroff?
Yes. So with that, the motion is approved, the rate increase and the resolution is adopted, and we can move on to item number 7.2 on the agenda, which is to introduce and waive first reading of an ordinance to amend provisions of the Larkspur Municipal Code to designate just one on-street parking space on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard for limited parking use. So if we can have a staff report on this item.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. I'm Julian Skinner. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Larkspur. And so the staff request tonight is that you conduct a public hearing to introduce an ordinance that would designate one on-street parking space on Sir Francis Drake as a time-limited 15-minute parking space. And so this is a new parking space that will be created on Sir Francis Drake as a result of the ongoing county reconstruction of Sir Francis Drake. It's in the vicinity of 585 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, which is a commercial building at the corner of El Portal and Sir Francis Drake. That building currently has 2 private parking spaces adjacent to the street in front of it. And as part of the improvements for this project, we're proposing to install ADA upgrades to their driveway. And the configuration of these ADA upgrades is such that it shifts the parking spaces westerly. And what that does in effect is it takes the westerly most private parking space and pushes it into the city right of way. So currently this business has 2 private parking spaces adjacent to the street. With the proposed improvements, they will end up with 1 private parking space, and the other parking space would be in the public right of way, making it a public space. And so I also should mention that while I'm making the presentation tonight, our senior engineer, Richard Cho, and Marin Public Works employee, Philip Buckley, did all the heavy lifting and the coordination with the property owner to arrive at this solution. And the solution they came to with the property owner was that to try and, so they don't have a net loss of parking, was that we would designate the parking space that got pushed into the city right of way as a 15-minute time limited parking space, which would keep the use of that parking space similar to what it is today. So while this ordinance would designate a public space as a 15-minute space, it's no net loss of city parking because that space didn't exist prior to this project. It was a private parking space. And so to try and maintain that parking space as it is today, we worked out with the property owners that designating it as a 15-minute parking space would be most appropriate. So that's my brief report. I'm available for any questions in advance of you opening the public hearing.
Okay, any questions for Julian from the council?
Julian, I apologize, I don't have the full report with me. I read it earlier. What's the fiscal impact of this? Do we have?
There's no direct fiscal impact other than the staff time that we have been spending supporting the county on this project. All of the improvements for that project are already included in the county's capital program. As you'll recall previously, the city did contribute a sum of money for our portion of those improvements that are within the city right of way. There's no additional funds beyond that that are required to accommodate this parking change.
And since this is an area on Sir Francis Drake that's not within the jurisdiction of Central Marin Police, I guess the enforcement of that would be CHP, or maybe that's not even a question for you.
Yes, so the city county boundary is a little odd along Sir Francis Drake.
That's to say the least.
And where this parking space actually ends up is not within the Sir Francis Drake right of way, but in the El Portal right of way, which technically is within the city of Larkspur and would be a CMPA jurisdiction.
Huh. All right, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Then I guess now we can open the public hearing portion and see if there are any members of the public that would like to provide comments or questions on this item.
Looking for any raised hands from our audience members or any emailed public comment. And there is no public comment.
Okay, with that, I think we can close the public hearing aspect to this and bring it back to the council for any further discussion? I'm not
Seems
seeing
pretty-
it. Not
Seems
seeing
pretty straightforward to me.
not seeing anything. So this is just a waiving a first reading and introduction of the ordinance. So I'm not sure. It's ordinance number 1052. Can I have a motion to do that? Do we need a motion? I guess we do need a motion.
I'll move it. Public, introduce and waive the first reading of ordinance 1052.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Paulson. Then let's take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Candell,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
Yes.
Councilmember Wei,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hilmer,
Yes.
Mayor Hara.
Yes. With that, the motion is approved. So thank you for that. So that concludes item number 7.2 on the agenda. We'll move to agenda 8. We have 2 items on that. These are business items. The first one is 8.1, which is consideration of appointments for council assignments for 2021. Do we need a staff report on that, or we just have that in front of us?
This is one of those items that's entirely yours, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, thank you. We took a look at the appointments that were made in past years. And I think I've had conversations with each of you about how we might proceed with these appointments going forward into the coming year. And the recommendation here reflects those conversations, mostly keeps things the way they have been. And I think it's a good assignment of responsibilities. So I'll open it up to the council for any further comments on this before we consider adoption. Hearing none, do we need a formal motion to adopt and ratify?
That's been your past practice as a council.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So if I could have a motion to adopt and ratify the list of appointments that are contained in the staff report, I'd appreciate it.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Councilmember Candell,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
Yes.
Councilmember Wei,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hilmer,
Yes.
Mayor Hara.
Yes. And with that, the appointments are approved and ratified. And thank you all for your continued service in these different roles. We all appreciate it, and our community appreciates the responsibilities that these assignments represent. So thank you. With that, let's move on to the last business item, 8.2, which is an update on city activities and finances with regards to coronavirus. And I'm hoping that the city manager can also give us a bit more of an update on challenges that we're facing with county employees at City Hall.
The primary thing I want to brief the council on and share with the public is a reminder that even in the best of times, we operate on a pretty small staff. And so in these challenging times, we've scaled our staff back quite a bit. Folks who've been watching our council meetings for the past year may recall that we reduced our workforce by 20%. So that presents particular challenges in the COVID era when COVID protocols have to be initiated. And unfortunately, over the last couple of weeks, we've had to activate our COVID protocols twice in our library. So I know there's a lot of constituents who are upset that the library has been closed quite a bit lately. That is appropriate and necessary to ensure the safety of the employees and the public. And we ask for your patience as we work through the protocols so that when we open the library back up for curbside service, we're comfortable that we're safe and the public's safe. And so I don't have a date certain yet, but I'm cautiously optimistic that sometime next week we'll be able to reopen the library. In the meantime, folks can get materials as long as they're not actually in our site. You can still have stuff delivered to the Corte Madera site and pick it up there. So I encourage folks to explore that as an alternative option during this period.
Good, thank you.
The other thing we've been doing is monitoring the end of year decisions of businesses with respect to whether I think they're going to operate or not. We always anticipated the tax year would probably be a demarcation point for a lot of businesses in terms of whether they would remain open or closed. Anecdotally, we're seeing more closures around the town. You've seen them too. I was talking to the newspaper before they ran an article recently about businesses closing and reminded the reporter calling City Hall is not the first thing on anybody's list when they decide it's time to stop operating a business. And I totally understand that. So it happens to be the time of year when business licenses are renewed. And between that and our sales tax consultants, we should start to have a pretty good sense of where we stand in the next 60 days. So I'll be monitoring that closely with the staff. I want to remind businesses that as we come out of the current lockdown period and we enter into purple tier status, which we hope will happen in the next few weeks, that we're here for you as a resource to provide guidance on what's allowed and not allowed, and in particular, how to operate outdoors in the right of way. So we will continue to offer that. And then I do have to offer my stern warning as your COVID enforcement officer. We've had some activities that concern us. And I know this sounds silly, but we had a clandestine pickleball tournament over the weekend with a lot of COVID violations. And we weren't able to, we didn't learn about it in time to address it. But I want to remind folks, you can't be casual about COVID. And everybody's happy and happy to be together and confident in each other's health. But it only takes one person to be even partially sick to spread this virus. So we really would hate to see continued use of our facilities inappropriately, such that we felt we had to shut down something like our tennis courts, which is where pickleball takes place. So we hope folks will be more conscious of that and adhere to the rules. So we're also continuing to talk with our business community to help them guide customers to make the appropriate decisions. It's been very challenging. We've seen congregation of customers after they've purchased items from businesses. And the businesses are like everybody else. They only have so many staff. They can't be running around reminding folks to follow the rules because it keeps us all safe and healthy. So that's my soapbox for tonight, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Those are, it's a little disturbing that we had that incident. Hopefully people will be more cautious in the way they conduct their outdoor recreational activities. Are there any comments or questions from members of the council? Yep, Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Dan. Real quick, we spoke about this briefly. Can you mention anything about the bike lane? What's going on there?
Sorry, that's not COVID related, but I didn't mention it, did I, at the city manager's report? I'm pleased to let the council know that on Monday we broke ground on the connector between the Rose Lane development and the shopping center along Magnolia that has our bike path that we rent on that property. And the work is, I see the public works director is still here. I think the work looked done. I was out there other than removing the actual barrier to use it. And I think that'll get removed once the concrete completely sets, but I'll let Julian comment since he's still with us.
Yeah, the concrete has been placed for that path. So most of the work has been done. There's some adjustments to the railing that need to be made. The railing that was barricading off the old path needs to be removed, and then a railing needs to be extended along the new path, and then also a bollard needs to be installed so that vehicles don't try to drive down the path. But we need to let the concrete cure for about a week before we finish those improvements. So I would anticipate in about a week or so that'll be completed, and we'll be able to open it up to the public.
Got some background commentary going on there too. So that was good. Any other questions on this item? Well, thanks, Dan. I know your job, which is challenging under the best of circumstances, has been made even more complicated by the need to manage COVID-related response actions. And I just want to express my appreciation for your leadership within our community to making sure we are acting responsibly. I think we are, but it always is a little distressing to see people not taking requirements seriously. We see that every day. Any other comments, questions on this item? In that case, we'll wrap that one up, and I think we can move to our last matter on the agenda, which is number 9, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move adjournment. My internet went out there for a little bit, so now I'm back.
Yeah, you keep switching around on the Zoom screen, so that's okay. If we have a second real quick, then we'll just take a quick voice vote and adjourn for the evening.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 No no's. We will adjourn. Thank you very much. Have a
Night.
good evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.